Hey, Margie here. Did you know that your blood sugar plays a major role in your health? It affects your bones. It affects every aspect of your health, including your mood and even your risk for developing Alzheimer's as you get older. So it's something we all need to pay attention to and something that we don't always do. And I'm just really excited about our special guest today, Dr. Beverly Yates. And Dr. Beverly is a naturopathic doctor who uses her background in MIT electrical engineering and her work as a systems engineer to create the Yates Protocol, which is an effective program for people who have diabetes to live the life they love. Dr. Yates is on a mission to help 3 million people heal from type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes. She's an internationally recognized speaker and expert in the field of diabetes and heart disease. She is a published author of Heart Health for Black Women, a natural approach to healing and preventing heart disease, and the co-author of multiple books, including books with Jack Canfield, The Soul of Success, Volume 2. Well, I'm just really excited for today's talk because we go into the problems with blood sugar control and diabetes and talk about what can be done. So this is full of all sorts of great information. So stay tuned. Welcome, Dr. Beverly. I can't even tell you how happy I am to have you on the podcast. This is a topic that's so important, not only for our bones, but for really every aspect of our lives. And it's so often missed or not picked up until way down the road with so much, in our society today. And I just think what you're going to enlighten us to is so important. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this warm greeting, Margie, and thank you for your work for bone health, osteoporosis, osteopenia, and just helping people have that quality of life, because issues with bones can really ruin or completely compromise quality of life. People can suffer needlessly. And so it's great to get real information out so people can be proactive and do something about their bone health situation.
I couldn't agree more. And I also feel the same way about diabetes. It's something that can totally change your life and it doesn't have to. And so I think the proactive approach that you take is so fabulous. And, I'm just excited to really delve into this. I think we're on the same wavelength. So, you know what, I like to start off really simple, but actually, even before we get into the diabetes, I love the backstory because you didn't start out as a doctor taking care of diabetes. So why don't you just sort of tell us how you got into this from where you started? Because I think it's so fascinating.
Sure. I've always been a person who loves science, and I've always enjoyed mathematics. I've been really strong in those fields, the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I got an electrical engineering degree, a Bachelor of Science in electrical engineering from MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And I did what many people from MIT do. I went to work in Silicon Valley back in the day, just as it was about to hit that explosion in terms of just, so many technology firms and international influence in the worlds of science and technology. However, I found that the culture that I was in there was not particularly conducive or accepting, inviting of myself. Meanwhile, a few years after landing in Silicon Valley, my then fiance and now husband, we've been married quite a while, 36 plus years and counting.
Nice.
Knock on some wood. We moved to the Silicon Forest, which is the Pacific Northwest, specifically Portland, Oregon, and took what we'd learned there. Meanwhile, I didn't realize I'm sensitive to mold. I mean, how would I know that? I'd never lived anywhere where mold grows on concrete, and it does in the Pacific Northwest. All the rain that happens up there. So it wasn't a good thing for me. We were originally living in a moldy house, didn't know it was black mold, right? So didn't have that typical moldy smell. And it really, really ruined my health for a while. And so I wound up being really fatigued and brain fog, and something I wasn't used to. I've been blessed with the energy of 5 people, and I found that they were all missing. I was that tired, So long story short, I had seen conventional allergists and had gone weekly to get the injections. I kept asking, what's in these shots? No one wanted to tell me. I'm like, hey guys, I have a strong science background. I'm not intimidated by like big words. What's in these injections? And they weren't willing to be forthcoming. There was like no disclosure. And I grew increasingly uncomfortable because I was like, well, I'm getting these every week and I don't feel any better. We've been at this for a year. You've prescribed a full 2 years course, and I don't know that this is going to change. And your lack of communication is not exactly building confidence for me. Meanwhile, my husband worked with someone at his place of employment. He was at Intel, who had gotten wonderful results with very similar symptoms as mine from a naturopathic physician that he'd seen in Oregon. And I was like, well, at that time, I had never heard of naturopathic medicine before, but I was like, you know what? I want to feel well. I'm going to go check this out. And I had 3 consultations with that particular naturopathic physician. It was really great. The first one, he actually looked me in the eye and listened. We met for about an hour. That was a new thing. What I'd ever seen before had been conventional medicine. So it definitely was never felt personal. I never got the sense anybody cared one way or the other, etc. So I got so much better so quickly. My energy came back, my mental clarity and ability to, do the things that I intend to do returned. I was just really so happy. And so I investigated more about naturopathic medicine and I decided to make a career change. So that's the backstory.
And then how did you get into, specializing in diabetes?
Sure. My original focus have been chronic illnesses like gut problems and heart disease. Heart disease was a big thing, 90s into the 2000s. What I had observed though, from the 2000s to now, the 2020s, is that there's just so many more people coming into any clinical situation, telemedicine, whatever it might be, who have blood sugar problems. And I'm finding even now as I'm working that sometimes I'm the first one to diagnose these blood sugar issues. Often doctors are not testing people. They're not doing screening for folks of any age, any gender, any demographic slice of the pie you want to call out. They're not being routinely screened. I think people should take the power into their own hands around this. So you know how at home you have like Band-Aids, probably some gauze, maybe some creams and ointments, things like that for first aid kinds of injuries. You probably have a thermometer too to see if you have a fever. Well, I think everyone at home should have a glucometer, a way to simply check their blood sugar and get a fresh set of test strips, just a small pack. And maybe every, 3 months, you test yourself, put it on your calendar, get it done. If you really want to get dialed into your metabolic health, you can wear a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, and there are different companies and options. I'm going to be offering a program soon, same thing, where we can get people these CGMs. So if your doctor is not willing to cooperate and prescribe a continuous glucose monitor for you, and you want to have 7 to 14 days of insight to your own metabolism, your own blood sugar levels, CGMs are great because I'll bet there's some things you're doing that are fine for your blood sugar. And I'll also bet there are some things you're doing that are wrecking your blood sugar. This takes all the guesswork out. I say test, don't guess. CGM, it's a one-time application. It's good for 7 to 14 days, or a glucometer rather, where you do the finger stick and get blood. That can be a little painful. So, people sometimes are a little reluctant to do something repetitively that's painful, but whatever. You have to find out what your blood sugar is doing. And once you get that insight, man.
I was going to talk about this later because we have so many things to talk about, but I have to interject because I couldn't agree with you more. Now I have a son who has type 1 and we're going to go through the different, what both of those mean.
Exactly.
And so it's very interesting though, and I was really doing this for my husband because his levels had started to get what they called pre-diabetic. And really the doctors, he's a doctor himself, but the doctors typically, oh, no big deal. Like they're not really concerned until it's diabetes. And then there's all sorts of things they can do with it. But as you'll talk about later, why that's so important. But I just want to interject with the CGM. So I was really doing it for him, even though my levels were starting to creep up. And I was so I said, let's both do. So originally I was just going to do some pricks. And my son's like, Mom, and he wears every device possible. He has constant glucose, he has everything, and he's doing amazing. But he's like, Mom, just get the at that time we did the Freestyle Libre. Just get that. And this way you don't have to prick and you'll see. Oh my gosh, it was the best learning experience ever. And I agree with you because, all of a sudden, what was jacking up my blood sugar? Fruit. I eat such a healthy diet. Fruit. My husband, there was like one restaurant we go to and they make this iced tea. Well, we didn't know that they put orange juice in it. Oh my gosh. It jacked it up and it stayed up all night. It was just fascinating. We could go in so much more detail, but we learned so much from those 2 weeks that we both changed our lifestyle and it's made such a difference. Yeah. And they were easy tweaks, but you wouldn't have known about it just with the blood work because the one, you find out your morning blood glucose and every day it's different. So that one time you get it checked and the A1C, you don't know the swings. You just know the average. So interesting, but okay. But anyway, I just had to put a plug too. That was like, that's exciting, Dr. Beverly, that you're going to maybe have a program with that, because I think It's just incredible how much people can learn. But let's get started.
Yeah,
Let's go back to the very beginning because not
sure.
everybody knows the difference between the different types of
Yeah,
diabetes.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
briefly you can tell us because it's a little confusing, type 1, type 2, what does that really mean?
Sure. So diabetes in general lets you know that somebody has a problem with what their blood sugar is doing and the presence or absence or usefulness of insulin. In the case of type 1 diabetes specifically, it's caused by an autoimmune attack. That's the reason for it. That's the cause. It's not lifestyle things. It's an autoimmune attack where the cells that make insulin inside of the pancreas in the islet of Langerhans, right, the beta cells are under attack and the immune system destroys them. Therefore, it means that the pancreas no longer makes insulin, period. Therefore, a type 1 diabetic has to take insulin as a medicine for the rest of their lives. Now, type 1 diabetic will absolutely need to be mindful about lifestyle too, because their life is literally depending on it. And one of the biggest issues is to keep away from having blood sugar that's too low, especially at night when you're asleep, right? So some of the gizmos that we were talking about, the CGMs, continuous glucose monitors, insulin pumps, things like that, technology now has made it a lot simpler and a lot more straightforward for a type 1 diabetic to stay in those ranges that are healthy, not too high for blood sugar and not too low. Too low is a problem, a life-threatening problem, so that they can live long and live well. The whole game has changed a bunch with the gizmos. Now, in the case of prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, the onset for that is typically much more lifestyle centered. It could be a lack of exercise, eating too much of the wrong foods in the wrong proportion, so overeating in general. It could be cravings driven. It can be emotional eating. It could be stress, chronic severe stress, adverse childhood events, and certainly trauma can cause your blood sugar to rise, right? When people have that chronic fight, flight, or freeze response, and your blood sugar is going up in response because it thinks you either need to fight something, run away, or you're just stuck like Bambi in headlights, right? Your blood sugar is responding because cortisol, your stress hormone, is pumping through your bloodstream, and cortisol says it's go time. It's meant for a 10-minute emergency response, not a 10-year emergency response. Really big difference. This is how people get on these problems and they're shocked when they're diagnosed with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes because they think it came out of the blue. No, it did not, my friends. These problems are set in motion, and some of us are genetically more vulnerable than others. Some of us, it's environmental toxicity. If you grew up like I did around, say, refineries, stuff like that, your water maybe was poisoned or compromised, etc. There's so many ways our environmental situation can be influenced. If you're around a port or a place where there's a lot of diesel trucks, there's so many ways we can be environmentally toxed, right? Environmental toxicity is a big deal and can cause people to have diabetes along with, say, obesity or insulin resistance, just have their weight keep going up, thyroid problems, they all come together. It's an interesting time because for my clinical work, right, like I started out with much more of a focus, let's say, on heart disease and gut issues. And as I saw this incredibly, and to me, frightening rise in the tide of blood sugar related problems coming into my clinic, I was like, oh my gosh, as a nation and as a planet, we have got to get in front of this. We cannot afford for people to get sick like this. It's expensive. And at least when we're talking about pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, this is avoidable. One other thing I want to make sure everyone understands. When anyone went to any kind of medical school through the 1990s, probably into the 2000s, what was typical was you were told, incredibly scientific research to back it up, type 1 diabetes, typical onset is childhood. In fact, it even was called juvenile diabetes. That was another name for type 1. And type 2 was considered something that people might be at risk for in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? It was considered a disease of the elderly population or the aging population. Nowadays, we've got kids as young as, this just really makes me sad, as 8 or 9 or 10 diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, not even prediabetes, type 2 diabetes. And we have adults in their 30s and 40s with type 1. So we have to rip up the textbooks and start over with these definitions, which tells me, and I know some people who have type 1 as adults, they usually have a backstory where they had moments of severe stress that went on for a few years. And it was enough, I think, to trigger their immune system to go on the attack. They often come from families that have autoimmune illnesses, not necessarily type 1 diabetes. And then this is how it expresses in them. This is why I talk about stress being like that bully that grabs you right by your shirt collar and slams you up against your genetics. So when we talk about environmental influences and lifestyle and how genes express or epigenetics, this is one really amazing example of that. The good news to me about any kind of diabetes now is that we have so many more bits of helpful information, things you can specifically do in your life that will help you get your blood sugar in that healthy range so that you aren't in danger. It's not too low, it's not too high. And that's why I always invite in people who have type 1 diabetes. I know they get so frustrated because people talk about diabetes as if they don't exist. Most of the diabetes conversation, certainly in the media, is talking really about type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes. There's even considered type 3 diabetes, type 3 being what actually specifically affects the brain and hastens the onset of dementia, and a subtype of dementia called Alzheimer's disease. There's just a lot to think about. There's even a type 1.5 diabetes, right? A hybrid between type 1 and type 2, latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. What do they all have in common? Blood sugar regulation issues. That's why I say, to me, it's like it's a big tent, it's a big pool. And if we work together to help everyone to have a healthier blood sugar, or people who are currently not having metabolic problems to stay in the healthy range, we're all going to be better off. So folks, get the glucometer, get the CGM, add it to your first aid kit, so you know what your blood sugar is doing. I'm surprised how many people I've diagnosed first time that they have a blood sugar issue, I'll say that, who go and see their doctors all the time.
I agree. So many people will show me their blood work, and I'm like, oh no, the doctor said it's just a little high, no big
Yeah,
deal.
yeah,
That's,
Margie,
that was
Margie.
like the typical thing. And I'm thinking, this is really important. And we're going to go into
Yes,
the
it is.
bones in a minute.
It's a big deal.
It's not only for your bones, but every aspect of your life. And it's so amazing because,
Yep.
as you said, it's good and bad about lifestyle, all that. But the good part is we can control this. And I just have to
Yeah.
say something. So my father-in-law, who passed away a couple of years ago, had type 2 diabetes, and he was, he was on insulin. He really didn't take good. And so, me, I'm a physical therapist. I'm also a health coach. So I probably put him on 20 different exercise programs, 30 different, different ways of eating. But anyway, he had gotten sort of sick. And then I had to, and my sister-in-law and I, we were taking care of him for a while. So we were making all his food. He got into the normal range. He went from like 300 or something crazy to like 100 just by changing his food. And just by that, but of course, so he reduced his insulin really low. But guess what? The minute we left, that was the end. He didn't have a community. Yeah. He didn't have a community. He didn't have anything. So they're just like, jack up the insulin. But anyway, we'll get into that. So let's go into the bones, because there is a correlation between blood sugar, which a lot of people have no idea. It's not one of the first things people talk about, but let's discuss why, let's just talk about the interplay between blood sugar and bone health.
Sure. So for blood sugar and bone health, the things that help your blood sugar also help your bone health. And, I'll put it in order in terms of what I'm hopeful people are clear about. The need for exercise that squeezes the long bones of the body, that piezoelectric effect, anything that gives the bones the message to stimulate to keep rebuilding and remodel, means that you are putting demand on the large muscles of your body. Your muscles are blood sugar sponges. Your muscles are what are squeezing those bones and helping you build your bone health. So anytime you're exercising, and in particular when you're using the big muscles of the body, particularly your legs, wherever possible, especially those thigh muscles, the lower legs, your hips, right? The big, powerful squeezers, that is going to be really a gift for your bone health and a gift for your blood sugar regulation. So much so that, let's say you're wearing a CGM, a glucometer, and you're figuring out what's going on with your metabolism. You might notice that if you do wall sits or squats, that you can lower your blood sugar promptly. Maybe you go on a 15 or 20-minute walk. Maybe something really aggravating has happened and you are mad and you can just feel that stress building up. You go for a walk, come back. If you have the device, the gizmo, you can check your blood sugar real time and see what's going on, right? Now you've done something awesome for your bones. You're doing something wonderful for your blood sugar. You can't lose here, friends. You just can't. So being healthy and taking care of your bones is also helping your blood sugar at the same time. It's not you have to go do something totally different.
Okay. And I mean, the other thing is there's even research on how it affects your collagen, how it affects
Yeah.
oxidative stress, how it affects bone resorption. So all the things, when your blood sugar is high, it has major negative effects on your bones. So this is
Yeah.
something that's so important for all of us to be aware of. And it's not okay to have high blood sugar. And the other thing that I see all the time, and we talked about this a little before we started, and I think it's a problem nobody is aware of, that we know sleep is critical for our bones. Sleep is also, I teach a happiness program, and sleep is related to your happiness and the joy
Yeah.
you have in your life. You know, a good night's sleep is paramount for every aspect of our health. And a
True.
lot of people don't realize that blood sugar, not having good control of their blood sugar, will wake you at night. Do you want to
Yes.
talk about that? Because people are
Yeah.
shocked when
Yeah.
we discuss this, that this needs to be dealt with if you're going to improve your sleep. Most people have no idea that that could be a cause.
That's a great point that you make, Margie. You know, it's so interesting when we go to sleep. Like we really don't. We don't have a conscious awareness of how much amazing goodness is going on. Right. That's when all of the reset, the rebuilding, and the restoration and refreshing goes on. Your brain gets refreshed. Your gut is busy doing all of its homework. Right. Every organ, every system in your body, I would argue your soul and your spirit as well, are also refreshing and resetting. When you don't get good sleep, that stuff doesn't happen. This includes for your bones, your cartilage in between the bones, and for what it takes for that to be able to reestablish itself, refresh. And as we get older, since our enzyme systems typically get a little less efficient every year, it becomes even more important that we get that quality, deep sleep. That's where so much of the magic happens. And when that gets compromised, like say, I can share with you quickly a patient story
Yeah.
for a woman that I started working with. She was in her 50s at that time. Now she's in her 70s. She originally had pre-diabetes, she had osteopenia, and she had a family history of really morbid obesity. And I was able to work with her for an extended period of time, which was really a great thing. So a few things happened along the way. I was able to get her to understand that unless she wanted to turn out like the rest of her family members, she had to do something different. So we overhauled the nutrition. I was able to make a deal with her that she was able to fulfill around exercise that she loved. She continues to do things like belly dancing, because I tell people, please don't suffer. If there's forms of movement or exercise you would actually enjoy, swimming, whatever it is, for some people, it's going to be resistance training, particularly on the power lift side, especially for us women as we get older. And you hear people have a fall, and then the next thing you know, they're really sick, and the next thing you know, they've passed away. There's this whole sequence. You don't have to have that drama. Stay strong, right? It'll keep your balance, all your proprioceptive systems together. You'll manage your weight. You'll lower your cholesterol. You'll lower your blood sugar. You'll keep your bones healthy. These things all work together. When you don't have restorative sleep, things unravel. This is why, in particular for women around the time of menopause, where their menstrual period is going to come to an end, and then postmenopausal years, ideally you've been working on these things before that moment. But if you are now past the time where your menstrual cycle is still happening, don't give up. Don't lose the faith. You're going to need to be specific about it. You need to put some demand on your body. Don't think this is the time to sit around sipping lemonade, staring off into the sunset, contemplating your belly button. Not quite yet, sister. I'm going to need you to work specific kinds of work, often 30 to 40 minutes. It doesn't have to be, in fact, it's not useful for it to be 2-3 hours. Most of us, we have a lot of myths about this, but if you have a specific, let's say, weight training, strength training, resistance training program in particular, to do that. And that aerobic exercise for cardiovascular fitness is not going to be the same thing as what you need to do for keeping those bones strong.
That's so true. And this community, we've talked so much about resistance training, but the best thing, just like you said, it empowers you.
Yeah.
I have people in their 80s who have been doing this, and it doesn't matter when you start. It's never too early and never too late. And you just feel so empowered in life. So many couch potatoes, Dr. Beverly, I've worked with, who oh gosh, I have to, I have to exercise because I'm losing bone, or because of the diabetes. I mean, you're right, but it majorly affects. And when you wear one of those devices, you see it, just like you said, you see how if it's higher, it goes right down, how very, very important the exercise is to managing the diabetes. But yes, so that's it's such a win-win getting on a good exercise program and getting strength training in. But I want to just go back to the sleep. Can you just tell us what happens when your blood sugar has those dips and falls and
Right.
high at night? Like, why does that wake us up?
Yeah, so your body is finely tuned to what's going on with your blood sugar. So let's say you're asleep. You went into your sleep world and you were feeling fine. You weren't anxious, you weren't upset about anything, you weren't particularly stressed. You just went to sleep. If for whatever reason the events of the day before and your activity level are such that the demands to keep that blood sugar in a balanced range weren't there, then if your blood sugar drops too low, your body perceives that to be an emergency, because what it's saying is, hey, we don't have enough energy, enough fuel right now in the blood to tap. Your brain needs it all the time. The brain does not quit. The brain quits, you're dead. Same for the heart. Your heart needs your energy all the time. Your heart does not quit. It rests when you're asleep, hopefully. But again, the demands are still there. There's a certain baseline. And so when you don't have enough blood sugar to meet those demands, and it's dipping like that, your body perceives an alarm, a 4-star alarm, and it's going to wake you up. And so sometimes when people have frequent night wakening, even if they don't have to go pee, they just keep waking up and they can't go back to sleep. It's often an issue with blood sugar. That's why I'm like, test, don't guess. Either get out that glucometer in your test strips or get your CGM. So I say these things should be in a home health kit. Make this easy so that people can take charge of it. Because you're not going to go to your doctor's office at 2 a.m. First off, they're not there. They're trying to sleep too. Right? You go to an emergency room is so expensive for something this simple that you could do at home for yourself. Check your blood sugar. That could be part of it. Oh, and one other thing about sleep. Friends, make sure you don't drink 5 glasses of water right before going to bed because you have to get up to pee. People sometimes do make that mistake.
It's interesting though, because if you get the traditional tests, so the two tests that a lot of doctors will do will be the A1C, which gives you a 3-month average, as well as your fasting blood sugar. But what I noticed on the CGM was that doesn't tell you what happens at night, but the CGM, will tell you, are you dipping or are you level? And it was fascinating. So, I just give us your. So Dr. Beverly, everyone's like listening. Why don't you give us some of your best tips that we can all, there's so much, and we're going to talk about you're having this amazing summit that I'm really excited to share with everybody. But what can everybody do now? There's some simple things that most of us have no idea about that we can do. You already talked about the critical importance of exercise and finding exercise that you love, which I teach happiness, and it should never be something you hate and you're just forced to do. So I couldn't, if it's belly dancing, go for it. Yeah. As well as strength training too, but yes. But yeah, why don't you give us a few of your favorite tips that you found to be most effective with all the people? And I know you work with so many people on this and have really changed lives. So
one of the most important things actually is community. To work in a community that is intentionally together to be healthier. A community that's focused on bone health, a community that's focused on blood sugar, whatever are your most sensitive health parameters, to make sure you're around people who will help support your journey and lift you up. And if they have tips or insights to share or things that they've noticed that are helpful for them, I think that is just so helpful. Because what's so interesting, Margie, with these chronic health concerns, whether it's diabetes or it's osteoporosis, osteopenia, things like that, people often feel isolated. Even though we know millions, and perhaps like in the case of diabetes, billions of people have blood sugar issues at this point, people feel all alone. And when we feel all alone, the story you shared right earlier in your family member is just so telling. The second the support went away, he went back to his prior habits and the problems returned, and then he has to take more medication. And sometimes people resent their medications. And I'm like, you know what? Those are there to help you be healthy, but they aren't necessarily addressing the root cause. Again, friends, make the distinction. For type 1, it is addressing the root cause. The person does not make insulin. They must take the insulin. I want everybody to be really clear about that. People with pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, you have the opportunity to get blood sugar control and to be able to maintain it. You really do have that opportunity. And you have those sensitive lifestyle pillars. Nutrition obviously is a bullseye. Your target: sleep, 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 and more sleep. Really great restorative sleep, stress management, exercise, and I would say the timing of eating your meals as well. And community. Community is so important. So community, number one. If you asked me this a few years ago, I wouldn't have said that, but now I'm going to say community.
I agree,
feel lonely.
because you can't, Yes. And loneliness, just like you said, there's a real emotional component
Yeah, yeah.
to this. And I saw that too. I would have my CGM and I meditate every morning. And that was shocking. After the meditation, I do some stuff in bed as well, like visualize things. And after both of those things, it goes way down. And it was really interesting. Like, wow, this is powerful stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes, I couldn't agree more. It's very hard to do alone. And also the society we live in is not supportive. So my father-in-law was in this very lovely community where they made his food. Now you would
Hmm.
think everyone in there, the average age is probably 80. You
Hmm.
would think, right, that they would have healthy food. The salad dressings were horrible.
Yeah.
They put dressings on everything. So even if you ordered like a diabetic food, it wasn't. It wasn't at all. I mean, that's
No,
that's the sad thing. But
you're right.
anyway, you're so right about community and being around people who are knowledgeable, who are working together, all trying to achieve the same goal is so
Yep.
important.
Yep. That's a key one, right?
Yeah.
Another one is keep an eye on stress, because stress will break things. It will absolutely break things. And so whatever your genetic vulnerabilities are, stress will help you express them. So you have to find healthy ways to manage your stress and to acknowledge it. So number one, it's okay to ask for help. And if the people you're asking aren't able to help you, get some new people until you find people who can help you, right? We literally have billions of people. So there's, keep looking. Try not to get too discouraged about that. Sleep is critical importance, and we've touched on that. Exercise that you will actually do is the one that matters. Because people say, what's the best exercise? I'm like, the one you will do. That's the one. Don't suffer. Make sure that you have a weight training or resistance training component so you really can build those bones and maintain them. With that, you'll also be building your balance and agility. All that stuff in your inner ear, your proprioception, lets you feel balanced, and avoid falls as you age, because can be a game changer for so many people as they age. That's for sure. Consider what you're eating and when. One of my wins now, a different patient to share with you, is a woman who's in her 40s. She is just a delightful person. What a joy. She's a type 1 diabetic. And one of her big goals for treatment when we started working together was to figure out how to help her avoid those lows. So when she's sleeping, because here's the deal, folks, anyone who is not familiar with what goes on for type 1 diabetics is that if there's a low blood sugar in the middle of the night, and now with all the gizmos, with the CGM, insulin pump, right, the technologies in conversation, alarms go off. It wakes the person up to tell them, hey, your blood sugar is dangerously low. You must do something about it, whether you're taking sugar pills or you eat something, whatever it is, get your blood sugar out of the basement. These gizmos are also via apps and other things, something often shared by family members, lovers, other folks who are also on the team to make sure that person is safe when they're asleep. So this means multiple people are being awakened with an alarm. Multiple people sleep now, right, is in the trash can as a result of this. So it is really important to help a type 1 diabetic avoid this drama and have a good night's sleep, and all of their family, lovers, and other folks on the team to have a good night's sleep too, right? So in that journey with her, it's been so fun. It was quick. I helped her dial in on specific things around the amount and kinds of exercise she did throughout the day and her nutrition. And I had her shift so that she had this one particular snack that she would make that was really a wonderful snack. And I had her shift it to take it about an hour before bedtime, and specifically designed to be something that would burn, I was hopeful, evenly for her, because it didn't look like she had a lot of food sensitivities or food intolerances, because those will mess up your blood sugar too. They'll put you on the blood sugar roller coaster. These combo foods for her, from what I could tell, was fine. So she did it. So she went from having 5 to 6 nights a week out of 7 nights a week. So this is most of the time, 5 to 6 nights out of 7 nights a week, being awakened with blood sugar lows around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, to once happening in 21 days.
Wow, that's fantastic. Big
That's a
change.
huge shift. A huge shift. I was looking for 0, but we got to 1.
Yeah. So
Right?
yeah, that's so interesting. It's
Yeah.
funny. That's funny you mentioned that. When my son first, and he was diagnosed in college, that's when this happened. But
Mhm.
when he was, same thing, he was living somewhere else, and we would get the like, what are you going to do? We would get the notifications. But
Yeah.
now he has so many. Now he has a totally different system that sort of self-regulates itself. But it's so interesting. So in terms of, you said timing and the type of food, what's going to create that up and down at night that's going to wake us up versus having more stable blood sugar over the evening? Like, what can we do? What
Right.
type of foods, or what are your best suggestions for that?
So for most people, it's going to need to be what I call a combo pack, right? You're going to need to hit those macronutrients in a proportion that works well for your blood sugar. So again, this is an area where it's test, don't guess. Some people, for instance, have blood sugar spikes and get on a blood sugar roller coaster from foods that are otherwise healthy, like say quinoa or blueberries. So someone may be eating a healthy diet that's low on the glycemic index chart, and yet they personally, their gut's microbiome, all of the organisms that live in their gut are interacting with these foods and these nutrients and creating a blood sugar spike. And so they get on that blood sugar roller coaster. That's a bummer, because based on guessing, it looks like meals that had, say, quinoa, which is fibrous, right? Blueberries have lots of antioxidants, other nutrients, and fiber. Maybe they've added to that perhaps something high in protein like nuts and seeds, or perhaps chicken or fish. And maybe they have slow burning complex carbohydrates represented by beans, broadly defined. Could be chickpeas, lentils, black beans, red beans, etc. Right? Maybe for them, they are sensitive to one or two of those things, and therefore they're not getting the benefit they thought. That's why I say test, don't guess. And if you find that there are meals and meal combos or snacks where you find your blood sugar is rising, and you're like, but wait, I thought that was healthy, then I invite you to tear those pieces apart, take one at a time, test your blood sugar at 30-minute intervals, 30 minutes after, an hour after, hour and a half, 2 hours, and see what's going on. You'll be able to find out what's the culprit. And then you remove that food. You can put other ones in. For instance, there's some people whose blood sugar does not spike when they eat things like, say, bananas. Some people can't have bananas. Their blood sugar goes nuts. The same thing for, let me hit the top ones that people assume, like white potatoes. People will assume that their blood sugar is going to spike. And for many people, it does when they eat white potatoes, even with the skin on. Some people, nothing happens. Blood sugar's fine. I've seen so much variation. This is why I'm all over this test, don't guess idea.
I couldn't agree with you more, because as I said, I really eat incredibly well. I mean, I have such a balanced diet, and but that it's taken time to get to that. But I think so. I was stunned. I'm like, what's going on here? And I was eating berries, low on the low glycemic end.
Yeah.
And just like you said, I was like, now I'm seeing what's happening. So by just reducing that, adding nuts, adding more fiber, adding more fat, it made all the difference in the world. But you're so right. Each person is very, very different. So I couldn't agree with you more. And let's just talk about the timing of the food. You mentioned the timing of the food. So could you just elaborate a little more on that?
Yeah, I think that you should pay great attention to how your gut feels and how things work for you. There are some people for whom 3 meals a day and they're wonderful, right? They feel great. Go with it. If you are not necessarily waking up with much of an appetite, I think it's okay. You shouldn't force feed yourself a big breakfast if that's not you. I think for most of us, the breakfast to eat is the one where you feel like the amount of food gets you fuel to get going for the day. You don't want to eat so much food that you are rendered, semi-comatose, because it just makes you so sleepy and lethargic, right? But you don't want to eat so little that you're starving an hour later. That doesn't really make sense. So if you don't have much of an appetite in the morning, though, that's okay. Then I think lunchtime should be one of those any meal really should be an even burning meal, right? So it's got the healthy fats, it's got the lean proteins, it's got the high fiber foods. That's generally going to be your leafy greens. I'm a fan of all leafy greens. I think they are amazing. And they're in the food category that's among the least likely to cause a blood sugar spike. I have to say, I've not seen a lot of drama out of that category. You can add to that the complex carbohydrates, and portions will matter. For some people, they can have, like, say, a half cup of complex carbohydrates that are so rich in resistant starch. Things like, say, sweet potatoes, yams, chickpeas, black beans, lentils, things like that, right? Some people can have 3/4 of a cup or a cup. Experiment, test your blood sugar, because it's going to be talking to you, and you'll find out what's the right mix for you. Most people, it's somewhere in that range with their meal, and it should be fine. And you would do the same thing at dinner: the healthy fats, the lean proteins, the complex carbs. Be mindful of the portion of the complex carbs. It's not that you have to drive complex carbs to zero. You need to find the ones that are kind to your blood sugar. I'm like, eat the food you love as long as it loves you back. Let that blood sugar guide those choices, and then you will have the mixes that you need: the high fiber foods, in a meal so that your body has what it needs, your blood sugar has what it needs, and your gut's microbiome is also being nourished. It loves that fiber and it loves that resistant starch found in those beans, peas, and legumes. It's all good stuff.
That's great, because a lot of times people think, oh no, that's too high carb, I can't have that. So I think
Not
that's,
necessarily.
oh, absolutely, I agree. I love the way you explained that.
Oh,
Kind
thank
of,
you.
yeah. So can you give us some numbers, like what would be ideal?
Mhm.
I know it's different for each person, but what numbers do you like to see when you're working with people in terms of,
Sure, sure.
yeah, that would
So
be
just to
helpful.
define it, so people know,
Yeah.
type 2 diabetes is generally diagnosed with A1C in a higher range. So typically 6.5 or higher. So 6.5, 7s, 8s, 9s, and up is type 2 diabetes. Pre-diabetes is generally a A1C measurement between 5.7 to 6.4. And just like you talked about, Margie, if we could revisit that for just a moment, there are a lot of health professionals, doctors unfortunately included, who will say, oh, we'll just watch it. So like,
Yes.
let's say your blood sugar is at a 5.9, your A1C specifically, sorry, is at a 5.9, 6.2. Oh, we'll just watch it because it doesn't yet meet the diagnostic criteria of being a 6.5 or higher. I'm saying, look, the train is wrecking. It's starting to jump the tracks. Clearly there's a fire here. There's inflammation. We need to do something about it. Why would you wait till someone has an even more serious situation? And I want everyone listening to take that seriously if you happen to know you have or suspect pre-diabetes. Don't sit there all comfy going, well, it's not type 2 diabetes. No, 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 no. Here's why. A lot of the people that I've worked with or have family members who are part of the clinical mix have shared that their relatives who have Alzheimer's or dementia, the bigger category, Alzheimer's is the subtype, will tell me that before that diagnosis was rendered, that person had pre-diabetes, not not type 2 diabetes. I will say that again.
Yeah,
They had
everybody
pre-diabetes.
listen, this is so important. It's not a joke, pre-diabetes. It's not something you
Yeah,
poo-poo. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And
It is not.
what number do you like? Like what number would you say would be ideal when someone gets their A1C? Like what number are you looking
Lovely if
for?
it's somewhere between a 4.8, which is the lowest end of the range currently,
Mhm.
to as much as a 5.3, 5.4.
Okay. And then the
Yeah,
fasting, I know that changes all the time, but what fasting
yeah.
do you like to see? Do you have a certain?
Fasting blood sugar, I think for most of us is ideal if it's around 70 to say 85.
Okay, that's really
Once you start
helpful.
hitting the 90s, now we're getting real close to 101 or more. And we really don't want to do that because we're starting to lose that glycemic or that blood sugar control.
Great. That's so helpful. So, Dr. Beverly, we can talk
Sure.
for hours because this is such a great topic. But I'm dying. I want you to share. I'm so excited about your summit that's coming up soon. And what I like about the guests is that you're looking at diabetes from so many categories and so many issues that can affect different people's blood sugars and even the stress component. And oh my gosh, I was looking at all the different speakers and Dr. Perlmutter talking about uric acid. I mean, it's just amazing. So why don't you share with us a little bit about this summit, because I think it's a great opportunity. It's free. People can just learn so much.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very much a labor of love. So thank you, Margie, for helping to spread the good word. The Diabetes Transformation Summit is all about that transformation and giving people the angles and insights to understand what might be missing for their own blood sugar control, right? So it's inclusive of people who have type 1, type 1.5, pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, type 3 diabetes, or people who have health concerns. Maybe you've watched your family members' health wreck, right? Maybe you're concerned for your own immediate health, or maybe it's multi-generational. Maybe you're a grandparent looking at the parent and the child level, your grandchildren's level in your family. Maybe you are middle-aged and maybe you're looking at your elders who are aging and perhaps you're caring for children. Maybe you're a beloved aunt or uncle. You don't necessarily have to have a child in your life, but you're trying to be influential. Or maybe you're going to the doctor and you're the one who's getting blown off. Your doctor's like, we'll just watch it.
Yeah.
You're
And
okay.
that's what they say. Yeah.
That's what they say. You could be a type 2 diabetic who has an A1C for the last several years stuck at 7.5. And maybe you've gone to the doctor recently and you was like, you know what? I would love some support here. I want a prescription for a CGM. And your doctor has said no, because from their point of view, your blood sugar has been stable. It's been stuck at 7.5. They're like, why fix what isn't broken? In their mind. And a lot of times doctors sometimes are so used to not having advice listened to that they stop seeing the person in front of them. They're not getting that you're the one who is reaching for better health right now. You want them to be a partner with you. So that this summit is designed to get that blood sugar conversation front and center, give you the information, the tools, the insights. We have so many wonderful speakers like Dr. Perlmutter. We've got JJ Virgin. We've got Naveen Jain. We have some amazing thought leaders, Cynthia Thurlow, people who have really deep expertise around these things, intermittent fasting, stress and its impacts, Dr. Alan Christensen. It's an amazing speaker lineup. So everyone can find something. And we have different topics too. We talk about children, teenagers, puberty, adolescents, middle age, elderly, people in the prime of their reproductive years, fertility issues, toxicity. I mean, we're covering all, it's a 360 view, friends. So it's the Diabetes Transformation Summit.
And I'll have all the links because this is something. And what day is it starting, Dr. Beverly?
So it's July 25th to July 31st of 2022.
Okay.
So it'll be free each day. So check it out, friends.
Yeah. So I'm so excited. I'm going to listen in. There's so many interesting speakers, and I just love the diversity of people that you've chosen to really represent. There's just, and it's sort of, I always look at the summits. I'm a summit junkie. I had my own, but I've been listening to summits for so many years. And I look at them like a smorgasbord. Okay. Like I pick a little from day one or a little from day two. You know, because you see there's so many options. You don't have to listen to it all, but there's just, even if you get one pearl out of it, it's worth it. But if people are listening, because the beauty of a podcast is it lasts, so there could be people listening and the summit's over. How can people get in touch with you? And because you have amazing programs that you do that are fabulous. So how do people get in touch with you as well?
They're always welcome to go to my website, which is DR, like the abbreviation for doctor. So it's DrBeverlyYates.com. So drbeverlyyates.com is my website. You can go and check out what's going on there. Look for our programs and offerings and the things that we're putting forward to really help people live well and live long. As I say, put life in your years and years in your life.
Well, that's a great way to end. I just so appreciate, I'm very excited for the summit. And, you know, I deal with this on a regular basis. Honestly, I've seen, as I said, I have a son who is type 1, who's doing amazing, but because of all the things that you're talking about, but I've seen so many people make just certain things. And it's just once they get the knowledge and they are thriving, and you can reverse. So many people have been able to reverse type 2. That's not like it's, it's just incredible because there's so much we can do, that we can be empowered to make such a difference in the quality of our life. And when you're doing that, it's going to impact your bones as well. So such a win-win. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me. And I can't wait for your summit and look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you, Margie. Take care. And everyone, keep staying tuned in to the great info that Margie's sharing with you. Please do care for your bones. It's so important.
Thanks so much, Dr. Beverly. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Dr. Beverly and now have a better understanding of blood sugar control and why it matters, and that it can affect both our bones and overall health. But there's good news. There's so much that can be done. And all the links that Dr. Beverly talked about will be in the show notes, including the link to her summit. So I'm so excited about that. But if you're listening and the summit's over, then her website has all sorts of great information that can get you started. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.